It's almost been 10 years since Shadows of Mordor released, a game that had a mixed reception amongst gamers. It came out in a year of many average and disappointing offerings, and many felt Mordor just barely stood out. After returning to Mordor, I could see why. Gamers had higher expectations at the time, and Mordor was a very short and basic game. Its overall gameplay being built off the Arkham series didn't help the game either, as many viewed it as just a clone of the Arkham franchise mixed in with a little bit of Assassin's Creed. However, Mordor did have a defining gameplay mechanic, and that's the Nemesis System. It's a complex system in which the enemies, aka the orcs, have various different degrees of strength and weaknesses. Today I will be going over Mordor's design structure. Many games today in the genre are missing the design philosophy that games like Mordor possess. In this video, I hope to show you all why some games are great and others fall flat, as not every game in this style is made equal. But before we get into this video, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I have a goal of 1,000 subscribers, and everything you do helps me. I'm grateful for your time and viewership, as you could spend your time with anyone, but you decided to stop by and share with me, and for that, I thank you. I think the best way to get you to understand where I'm coming from with this video is to get you into my train of thought. Many developers have created formulas that stand the test of time. We have games like Mario 3 that practically every other 2D Mario lives on, including other platformers not in the Mario franchise. We also have A Link to the Past, a game that single-handedly built the Zelda franchise, as it was the blueprint for every Zelda game after its creation. You can easily find many indie games that are built off of this game's formula, including one of my favorite games that's not even an indie, Darksiders. But Nintendo isn't the only one that's sparking trends and creating formulas that many people follow. You have games like Halo, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, Dragon Quest, and even Street Fighter. They have all came in and set up a style that not only put them on the mountaintop, but also allowed others to follow in their footsteps by copying their blueprint. Some even decided to copy the blueprint and twist it a bit to create their own lane. Now, when it comes to Shadows of Mordor, it's way more of an offspring of greatness than an originator. Shadows of Mordor blends the design of the Batman Arkham series, with just a dash of Assassin's Creed with its stealth and parkour. If we really study the game, we could see the main character, Talion, shares many of Batman's animations and controls. They even kind of sort of gave him Batman's cape if you really look at it. The Arkham franchise introduced a very simplistic combat system that Mordor shares. They call it the free flow system. Basically, you can attack, dodge, and parry and use execution finishers. Unlike games like Devil May Cry that rely on deep mastery of button inputs, alongside other things like positioning and using the proper weapon on the right enemy, Mordor, just like Arkham, has way more focus on mastering the flow and momentum of the combat. Devil May Cry has a style meter that slowly drops the longer you go without attacking. The higher your rank, the faster it drops. In DMC, this is mostly for bragging rights and as a tracker to get a higher score at the end of each mission. In Batman and Mordor, this combo meter is tied to your special abilities. These range from an AoE attack to give you some space, or a finisher that could take out a foe instantly. It also doubles as a breather because when you play these animations, you have a few seconds of invincibility, giving you time to evaluate the situation. And specific to Mordor, you can actually possess the orcs to give you an ally. These benefits give the player a tangible reason to reach higher and continuous hit streaks. In Mordor, you must get 8 hits in a row before being rewarded. This can be lowered to 5 as you learn new skills and abilities. The cool thing about this system is that it adds a level of difficulty and reward that most will feel, but they won't necessarily think about. See, in Arkham and games inspired by it, the character's speed increases as the hit streak increases. This added speed works to your benefit and provides a challenge. Both Talion and Batman start off with slow movement that slowly increases with each hit. This can be similar to gaining speed in a racing game. And just like a racing game, the higher the speed, the more challenge it is to control your car, but the greater reward there is. Fights even go by faster with this heightened velocity. You also get a rush as you still have to juggle countering and dodging attacks. If you stand still in Mordor, you can easily counter attacks for days, but you won't be able to build up a combo or do much damage. If you happen to take a hit, counter too early, attack without connecting, or take too long to act, you lose your hit streak. Adding this penalty to countering stops you from just spamming the counter button while you fight, while punish you for missing an attack gives you a reason to not mindlessly press the attack button. This is why the Arkham combat system to me works so well and is a certified classic in gaming formula. The balance is found in providing a simple requirement for players. The casual gamer can retain these simple controls of attack, counter, and dodge, but the more skilled player will get a rush from juggling all the variables found in this simple design. Think of the Mario series. It's a 2-button game, not counting the directions. Anyone can understand the controls, but the challenge is found in actually doing the thing you want, not in learning the controls themselves. Going back to a game like Devil May Cry, you not only must learn the basic controls, but you must remember wild combinations of inputs, timing on certain attacks, switching between many weapons, positioning of not just you but enemies, and even the camera. Mordor removes most of these hurdles without leaving out the challenge. It's a rewarding style of gameplay that even the most casual player can get into and enjoy. The extremely, and I mean extremely, hardcore gamer may feel left out, but I believe even they won't find this game to be a cakewalk. To show an example of a franchise that was inspired by Arkham but missed out on these key points, we can easily shift to Insomniac's Spider-Man. Now before we go down this road, please hear me out. This is not to say one game is worse than the other, or that you can't enjoy both games. I'm simply showing the similarities and how the challenge was removed by just slightly changing certain systems. In Spider-Man, the hit streaks don't factor into anything in normal play. Some missions may have bonus challenges where a hit streak may matter, but otherwise it's just for personal use, just to keep track of how many hits you got. Spider-Man does use a simple combat system often compared to the Arkham games. This comparison I do feel is fair, but it is kinda shallow. If both games weren't superhero games, I don't think people would compare them. In order to do so, you would need to lack an understanding of what Batman offers. Or you are simply looking at the surface level of the gameplay and ignoring the inner workings. Even now, a lot of people are comparing Arkham's combat system to Spider-Man's, and I think they're just working off of muscle memory and not really remembering exactly the differences between the two. So let's break it down. Spider-Man has a simple attack and dodge system, unlike Mordor and Batman that also have a counter system. They both share in its basic combo system of mashing the square button on PlayStation. However, remember that sense of speed I said Mordor and Batman have as you increase in your combo. Well, Spider-Man doesn't do this at all. In Mordor, your character kinda glides to the enemy as you attack. It's very noticeable in Batman as he almost floats around the screen. Probably where you get the name Free Flow Combat from that Rocksteady Games created. Spider-Man has a dedicated button that helps him do something similar. You can web zip to a bad guy, but Spider-Man doesn't really gravitate towards the baddies as he's punching them. Going back to the combos, higher combos give you no gameplay reward in Spider-Man. I know some of you are probably saying that can't be correct, but let me explain to you what actually happens. Spider-Man has special moves just like the other games have special moves, except this is based on a bar that has no penalty whatsoever. This focus bar builds up by doing certain actions like hits and dodges. In fact, you gain more focus by doing air combat in Spider-Man. This leans into Spider-Man being an easier game by design, because not only does focus allow you to do finishing moves, but you can heal at any time. You don't even need to fill up your bar to get a heal. You will need to do that for a finisher, however. You also unlock an ability to get a free finisher, allowing you to do finishers back to back. See how on the surface they are similar, but drastically different when you break them down. Going back to air combat, which Mordor and Batman don't really have. And Spider-Man, not only is air combat extremely safe for you, as the bad guys really can't do anything to you when you're up there, but it is also the fastest way to build up your focus meter. So subconsciously, you will spend more time doing the easiest thing possible in Spider-Man, as it reaps the highest rewards, finishing moves and on-call healing. Batman and Mordor do not have on-call healing whatsoever. Now, Mordor does have a system that allows you to place bonuses on your weapons. Some of these can give you a chance of healing, but only if you complete a difficult challenge. For example, you may get 30% chance of healing if you do a 25 hit combo. You can also heal by draining your enemy, which takes too much time to do in the middle of a fight. Unless you do a combat drain, which is like doing a finisher, which means you have to build up your combo meter, there is no other way to heal in mid-fight unless you have a particular item on your weapon that allows you to heal from killing a boss. But again, going back to challenge, it should be self-explanatory that to kill a boss in the middle of a fight, especially in Mordor where you're fighting many enemies at once, is a difficult thing to do. Notice how there is a persistent challenge to get a heal mid-combat in Mordor, while Spider-Man is just a button press away. You gotta remember, in Spider-Man, you're always building up your focus meter. And you can't lose focus unless you use some of it, which you're gonna only do to your benefit. A drastic difference in how these similar systems go about challenge. Remember I said in both Batman and Mordor you get time to rest while doing finishers? This is another subtle difference in the design between these games and Spider-Man. Spider-Man uses over-the-top moves that have basically cutscenes representing them. These can differ in time length. They could be either kind of quick or they can be pretty long. It just kind of depends on the animation. You, of course, while doing these are invincible just like in games like Mordor. The biggest difference is more the camera angle. There's no doubt that these are way more flashy, but don't allow the player in most cases to watch out for their surroundings. In Mordor and in Batman, these moves are very quick. They also keep you in control of the camera, so you're able to see the enemies around you. This is done this way because bad guys in Arkham and Mordor are way more aggressive than they are in Spider-Man. If the camera went all cinematic in Mordor or Batman, you may easily get caught with a right hook. Spider-Man, although having a similar system to Batman, does lean more into being cinematic and overall easy. That's why they give you more downtime with these cinematic finishing moves. As you upgrade Spider-Man, you unlock plenty of slow motion abilities as well. Slow motion after a perfect counter, slow motion after a projectile comes your way, slow motion right before you get a finishing blow. The devs really give you everything in your favor to succeed. Now again, I want to be clear about something. Spider-Man has been criticized by many for not offering much of a challenge. Even on its highest difficulty, it's pretty easy. Some gamers jump the gun and assume any request for more challenge means they want it to be like Dark Souls. This is just a ridiculous and emotional response to something not that deep. Nobody ever said the Batman Arkham games were too hard or even close to Dark Souls level of difficulty. And nobody has said that about the Shadows of Mordor games either. And last time I checked, the casual gamer never struggled to complete either of these games. So what does that mean? It means there's a spectrum of difficulty. The range is wide and not linear. We could get a more challenging Spider-Man game while not pushing it to the Dark Souls level. Although we could keep talking about Spider-Man in this conversation as we shift into the stealth department of gameplay, I'm going to leave it out because Spider-Man's stealth mechanics, although fun, are extremely bare bones. Mordor, unlike Batman, allows for stealth or face-to-face combat at all times. Batman has times where stealth is required and hand-to-hand combat will leave you in the morgue. Talion can crouch, hide in bushes, stealth attack from behind, below, above, and if you're fast enough, you can even stealth someone right in front of their face. You can also call enemies to you to separate them from others. And instead of a stealth kill, why don't you try a stealth drain? This later in the game will allow you to possess an orc without alerting the others. There's a unique stealth attack called Brutalize. It's basically a loud and violent stealth kill. I know that sounds very counterproductive, but it's actually not. This is just a very situational move. If you plan on stealthing a bad guy who is surrounded by many others, This move is so brutal, it will frighten off the other people around him. It's like a way to get rid of the target that you want to without having to deal with the people around him. Another way you can use a stealth attack is actually mid-fight. Both Batman and Talion can try to do a crouch finisher, which is done by stunning the enemy. These can kill the enemy, but leave you vulnerable, unlike cinematic finishers. It's a huge risk and a high reward. You also have your bow in Shadows of Mordor, used for ranged attacks. It can be used both in loud situations or in stealthy situations. Headshots on most enemies is an insta-kill. You can even unlock an ability to teleport anywhere you aim your bow. This will allow you to get closer in on the enemy and even do a quick stun attack on them as well. You could try shooting campfires to make them explode, and this can also work as a distraction, not just as a way to attack the enemy. You can shoot open cages to free monsters to do the dirty work for you, or shoot down a bee's nest to have a horde of bees to attack the orcs around you. There's another side to stealth as well, and that's poisoning your enemy. This is for the people that really enjoy stealth, as you can go into a base and poison their explosive barrels. If you do this enough of the orcs will drink from there and they will just slowly die. Now all these stealth options don't matter if your enemy isn't smart. Now this isn't Metal Gear Solid 5 level of awareness, but something in the middle. They will notice dead friends, search for your last position, alert others, and can notice you rather above or below them. This is why I dropped Spider-Man from the conversation, as it would be unfair to even bring him in. Many of these systems are found in Batman. Batman actually has stealth-specific bad guys that are designed to provide a challenge for the stealth missions. They will take out gargoyles so you can't use them, track footprints, and even use sonar and night vision to spot you. One cool thing is how Mordor repurposes a Batman mechanic. Remember those brutality stealth attacks I mentioned? Well, Batman does have something kinda similar. Batman can either slowly take out a guy stealthily, or you can do a quick stealth attack, but it makes it louder, which means the enemies are gonna hear you. You can actually use this to your advantage though. If you want an enemy to come closer to you, you can stealth attack an enemy in Batman, making sure that it's a loud stealth attack, and then quickly get away from that scene. But you'll know that a new set of guards will come to search out the noise they heard, which you can line them up for another attack. The only reason I brought this up was to show you how they borrowed a mechanic, but made it their own by slightly changing things. Now let's not get the big gameplay mechanic that separates Mordor from all the rest. That's the Nemesis System, which is a background mechanic that randomly generates different bosses. These bosses range in difficulty. The higher their power is, the more pros they have and the less cons they have, making them harder to kill, but way more rewarding. You can run into most of these guys anytime in the open world, and unless you know how to deal with them, you're going to be in for a difficult time. Now thankfully, most of them are weak to combat finishers, but on the other hand, they may be completely immune to things like range and stealth attacks. But the worst is enraging them. Certain attacks like fire attacks may enrage them, which means they're going to constantly get angry and they're going to regain their health mid-fight and even sometimes get stronger. But then you have situations where you can roll in on a beast and this will cause them to fear and cower away, allowing you to easily deal with them, as this puts them in a weak state. There's so many different ways that these orcs can be built up, and if I had to name them all, I'll be here for days. You can easily spot one of these type of enemies with the skull over their head. If the skull is red, they aren't weak enough to kill or possess. Green means they're vulnerable, and I will prioritize dealing with them quickly, as they can escape off screen. The cool thing about these orcs is although the game does generate them for you, you can technically create your own orc. By allowing or accidentally dying by a regular orc, you can cause that orc to become a boss. Not only that, but there are endless missions that you can do that you can use to manipulate these guys. See, the orcs have like a ranking system, and they do things like fight and do random weird challenges to prove that they're stronger than other orcs. If you happen to help that orc complete his challenge, he'll get stronger. Or you can go in and just take him out before he gains any more strength. You might be saying, why would you even want them to be stronger? Well, remember, throughout this video, I've been talking about how you can possess the orcs. And yes, you can even possess the bosses. So it will make sense to strategically allow the orcs to gain strength and then possess them when they're their strongest. So then you can use that orc in your own army. It's so cool to be able to summon your own orc to fight alongside you, or to realize that you're about to take on a boss orc that you never dealt with before, only to realize another one of your own orcs that you possess is actually in his ranks, which means he's an underling to the boss you're trying to deal with. So when you begin to fight this boss, that orc that's with you will begin to help you. Another thing you can do, and you will need to do, is to gain intel to know how to deal with these orcs. This intel will tell you the strengths and weaknesses of the orcs. Now this intel system is them reusing something from Batman. In Batman, the Riddler has many different people that work for him, kind of like a snitch. So Batman can go around and strategically deal with them, aka interrogate them, so that he can get information on Riddler challenges. Basically, they reuse the same concept here, and they even reuse the same color, as the enemies that you get intel from in both games are marked with a green glow or icon. Now remember what I said in the beginning of this video, how creating a great formula and systems can not only last a lifetime, but can be reused for other projects. Gamers, as much as they say they want something different, they really don't. What they really want is something that works, and every now and again for someone to kind of slightly twist what works. Even Mordor's Nemesis System isn't entirely new. I played games like The Godfather 2 that had a similar system where the game randomly generated NPCs with different stats that you can recruit in your gang. Managing a game was kind of similar to managing the orcs in Mordor. Now, The Godfather 2 was not considered a big game and most probably didn't play it. So for most gamers, they barely would even know that these systems existed before. That's why I actually encourage many gamers to try different things that catch their interest, because you'll be able to see how many games borrow from each other in this industry. That's why for me at the time when the Nemesis system was shown off, I didn't think it was all that revolutionary because I played Godfather 2. But just like Godfather 2, the Nemesis system and their system are both good because there's no denying that this system is fun and adds endless replay value. Speaking of replay value, let's bring in both Batman and Spider-Man. Both Batman and Spider-Man are open world games, but Mordor isn't just an open world game, it's a sandbox. Many people don't know the difference between these two. An open world game just means the setting is in an open environment, whereas a sandbox can be big or small but has lots of interactivity involved. The orcs in Mordor will do their own thing, similar to playing GTA and seeing NPCs randomly fight or drive crazy in the road. In Spider-Man, everything is tight and scripted. Nothing randomly happens. Even crimes play out exactly the same every time. And Batman is no different. Now, this is where people get mixed up. They believe that scripted events are the same as random events. In Mordor, the orcs may be eating, on patrol, fighting each other, or hunting. You can at any time mess with their routine and cause them to do something completely different. This isn't how Batman or Spider-Man works. As I said, those are open world games and not sandboxes. Now, of course, Mordor being in a fantasy world, you can't really compare all the different things that you can do in, say, a GTA, as the game setting limits the different things that can possibly happen. I spoke briefly about this earlier, but Mordor does have a leveling system. Winning battles gives you skill points, while doing certain missions unlock new abilities to spend these skill points on. Most of these abilities just unlock new moves that add to your arsenal but don't make the game necessarily easier. But there are a few things, like I mentioned earlier, where you can reduce the count from 8 to 5 to do finishers that do give you a little bit of a leeway when you're fighting. Now we go back to Spider-Man. Most of his skill tree have abilities that make you godlike, which again obviously goes against the different design philosophies of Spider-Man focusing on being an easier game, where Mordor and Batman focus being on more of an even challenged game. In fact, Spider-Man becomes so easy that I will argue that most of the damage that you will take will come from you just simply not paying attention. Spider-Man just simply went for the more easier route of giving you flash and less substance. Mordor, you will have to constantly pay attention to what you're doing, as that game just simply isn't built that way. Even after leveling up your character, you're going to have to focus while you play. The design philosophy they used in Mordor was to allow the player to level up to gain new abilities to add to what they're doing, not to trivialize the gameplay experience. The last thing I want to cover with Mordor's design philosophy is how it handled its main story. Now, I'm not going to break down the story and its plot, as that's not the point I want to focus on. It's the fact that a lot of people miss this. The way that they gave you the story is actually a trick. I don't mean trick in a bad way. I mean, just it's just so obvious when I replay the game that the entire game is a tutorial. The whole game, while you're following the plot, the missions that they give you are simply breaking down the different gameplay mechanics of Mordor. There are only a few missions in the game that actually let you do something that isn't necessarily a tutorial, but really what it's doing is just giving you time to understand a complex system that they just explained. So there'll be times where you have to break and you have to go and possess a few orcs because they just taught you how to do that. But other than that, every mission in the game for the most part is actually a tutorial. It's just done so well that I don't think the average person is even going to notice. But that leans into the simplicity in its gameplay design and kind of the brilliance of the developers. Imagine a game where I can make a story that was good enough to lull you through a good tutorial that lasted about 20 hours. And then once you're done with the tutorial, you're dumped into a game that you can basically play forever thanks to their Nemesis system. Do you see how cool that is? Like how unique that is? Like how many games can you say that the whole game is a tutorial? Like the main chunk is a tutorial. No one really noticed it. And then after you were done with this tutorial, now you're just dumped into a sandbox that allows you to just do whatever you want to do. I made this video as an appreciation for Mordor and games with great gameplay design as a whole. Many gamers play games but don't have the time or even know the proper words to actually sit down and explain what they like about a game. You know, the time to really just study a game. Most people don't even have time to even play a game, so I know they don't have time to do that. My overall message is that great gameplay design always shines. Even when people miss some of the key points in the design philosophy, even then, if they just keep to the main base, they still can create a great game in the end. Shadows of Mordor is one of those games that took from a great game and built on it. One day, I might cover the Arkham games on their own to show you how great they are. But before that, I might just show you what happens when you take a great gameplay design and you just completely miss the point and mess it up.